This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. I'm not making this up. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche announced former FBI Director Jim Comey has been indicted for threatening the life of Donald Trump after Comey posted to Instagram this, a photograph of seashells he found on the beach that spelled out 8647. Trump being the 47th president of the United States, and 86, everyone believes means getting thrown out of a bar because you've had too much to drink. But the Department of Justice says it's something far worse. Let me read you the actual indictment. On or about May 15th, 2025, in the Eastern District of Northern Carolina, the defendant, James Brian Comey Jr., did knowingly and willfully make a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States, in that he publicly posted a photograph on the internet social media site Instagram, which depicted seashells arranged in a pattern making out 8647, which a reasonable recipient who is familiar with the circumstances would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to the President of the United States. A reasonable judge would throw this out of court immediately. The indictment goes on to say, in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 871A. That's the first count. Count two. On or about May 15th, 2025, in the Eastern District of Northern Carolina, the defendant, James Brian Comey Jr., knowingly and willfully did transmit in interstate and foreign commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the president, Donald J. Trump, specifically by publicly posting a photograph on the internet social media site Instagram, which depicted seashells arranged in a pattern making out 8647, which a reasonable recipient who is familiar with their circumstances would interpret as a serious expression of an intent to do harm to President Trump in violation of Section 18, United States Code, Section 875. Unbelievable. No, it isn't, actually. This may be the dumbest thing the Justice Department under Donald Trump has done. They're indicting Comey over this picture. And the FBI put a tail on him last year because of this picture. He had to come in several times for questioning by the Secret Service over this. Well, it's not really over this. Back in 2016, Comey wouldn't stop looking into Russian collusion in the 2016 presidential election. So Trump, it's all about the process. It's not about the indictment. It's about tying James Comey up in court and weaponizing the Justice Department, doing the very thing you're accusing Comey of doing. They tried this before. You might remember in September of last year, Comey was indicted for making false statements to Congress and obstruction of a congressional proceeding because he gave testimony in September of 2020 where he, they claim, lied under oath, telling Congress that he had never authorized FBI employees to serve as anonymous sources for news reports about FBI investigations. So, of course, it was dismissed by a federal judge. Lindsey Halligan was the prosecutor. She was not supposed to be the prosecutor, and it just got thrown out. This will get thrown out, but James Comey is going to have to spend, I don't know how much Abby Lowell charges, but he's going to have to spend a lot defending himself against this weaponization of the Justice Department. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. please hit the notification bell so you always catch my latest episode. We're live every Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night, 6:05 p.m. I didn't think I could keep this schedule. I'm keeping it. Live, 6:05 p.m., Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night. 7 nights a week at exactly 8:30 p.m., we drop a clip, a highlight from the live stream. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my newsletter. The leaders of Iran are humiliating Donald Trump. Those are not my words. That's what Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz said about the war he and the rest of the world never wanted. Chancellor Merz accused Trump of starting this war back on February 28th without any clear strategy or any idea of when or how it would end. The chancellor added, "The Iranians are humiliating America." Merz made these comments Monday while speaking to German high school students in Marsburg, Germany. Merz, like most of our European allies, view Iran as a destabilizing player in the Middle East. They're not fans of Iran. They don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So that's why Germany, the EU, Great Britain, the United Nations, the United States, even Russia signed a deal with Iran back in 2015, which Trump pulled the United States out of in May of 2018 because he said Barack Obama didn't know what the hell he was doing. When Trump and Netanyahu's February 28th bombing campaign began, the German chancellor said he was skeptical at best. And when the war quickly turned sour, when Iran did the thinkable, shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, and along with it, 20% of the world's oil and 30% of the world's liquid natural gas and fertilizer, the German chancellor told Trump, "You're not going to get any help from Germany or Europe because, quote, this is not NATO's war. NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They have nothing to do with the Strait of Hormuz. It's not in the North Atlantic." Like the rest of Europe and most of the world, the German chancellor told Trump he would offer assistance in sweeping Hormuz for mines, but not until a permanent ceasefire went into effect, because there's no need to put Europe's soldiers in harm's way over a war that was unnecessary, preventable, and stupid. He didn't say stupid, but he did say Iran is humiliating Trump. Because Trump has no idea how to fix this, what we have now is a double blockade of Hormuz. In Trump's twisted logic, if I can't get Iran to open Hormuz militarily, I will use my military to also blockade Hormuz. Two can play this game, Iran. You're not the only one who can defeat the United States. I, too, Donald Trump, can defeat America as well. That will show Iran and the world who the big dog is. I will use all the tools at my military's disposal to assist my enemy in bringing me and the entire world to its knees. Iran, you have no idea who you're dealing with. They have no idea what they're up against. I'm pretty sure they do. That's Donald Trump staring at the sun during a solar eclipse. Remember that? Hey, there's a solar eclipse. You're not supposed to look at it. Yeah, that thing. Don't look at it. Remember the good old days when it was the Middle East that was ruled by crazy tyrants? Yeah, all these scientists with their fancy diplomas told me, Donald Trump, don't stare at the eclipse, you'll go blind. But they don't know what they're talking about. After this is over, I'm going to wash my eyes out with bleach. Same way I'm going to cure COVID. Oh, Iran knows exactly who they're dealing with. You're looking at Iran's parliament speaker and chief negotiator, if and when peace talks ever resume. That's Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who, besides holding a doctorate in political geography, also has the Middle East's largest personal collection of microphone windscreens. Trump spent several $100 million on bunker busters trying to destroy Ghalibaf's vintage collection of 1930s-era wind muffs that he kept inside a steel-lined cave carved into the side of a mountain. But our military's geospatial mapping was unable to identify the exact location of his wind muffs. The word is, however, you break Ghalibaf's windjammers, you break Ghalibaf. That's some collection of windscreens. All right, I'm making that up. I didn't make up the stuff about Comey. This is more believable than what they indicted James Comey over. Okay, seriously, back to Hormuz. So before Trump began bombing Iran, close to 140 tankers passed the Strait of Hormuz each day. In the past 24 hours, 7 ships, practically none of them carrying oil, if any, 7 ships went through Hormuz. The U.S. naval blockade began on April 13, and as of today, 41% of America's entire Navy's active battleships have been deployed to the region in and around the Strait of Hormuz. In the immediate region, we're talking Gulf of Oman, the Arabian Sea, east of the Strait, and a little beyond, we've got 3 aircraft carrier groups with the USS George H.W. Bush arriving late last week. We also have 10 guided missile destroyers, 2 marine amphibious assault ships. I'm getting hard. Are you? This makes me feel so strong and powerful and safe. And then, of course, there are supporting submarines, our combat ships, and logistics vessels. We have 41% of our entire Navy's active duty fleet patrolling in and around the Persian Gulf. It's why Pete Hegseth proudly declared that the United States blockade is a tremendous success that highlights our nation's ability to project power throughout the world. Like a Roman emperor, Pete Hegseth proclaimed, "No one sails from the Strait of Hormuz to anywhere in the world without the permission of the United States Navy." Wow, that sounds good. Just one little problem with that, Mr. Defense Secretary. I'm sorry, Mr. War Secretary. The reason we already had close to 50,000 troops stationed in and around the Persian Gulf, the reason we fought the first Gulf War and probably the second was to make certain nobody could ever disrupt the flow of oil leaving the Persian Gulf like you're doing right now. Yeah, I know you get off killing Muslims, Mr. War Secretary, but to refresh your memory, since the end of World War II, it has been our nation's policy to spend whatever it takes on military hardware to ensure that nobody can prevent oil, the lifeblood of the world's engine of capitalism, nobody could ever prevent that from leaving the Persian Gulf, including you. Trillions spent. So the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf would never be blockaded. It's why we toppled Iran's leadership in 1953 when their democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh declared that Iran's oil, he foolishly believed, belonged to Iran and not Great Britain. And what did he do? He nationalized Iran's oil. He thought, I don't know where he got this idea from, he thought Iran's oil belonged to Iran the same way Maduro and Chavez thought Venezuela's oil belonged to Venezuela. So in 1953, our CIA staged a coup and we installed the Shah, who became one of America's and the United Kingdom's strongest allies in the Middle East. And like a good Western ally, the Shah let the West keep Iran's oil. To make sure the Iranian people were okay with that, the Shah would personally yank out the fingernails of anyone who disagreed. That would be Savak, trained by Norman Schwarzkopf's father. Remember Norman? Some of you baby boomers might remember Norman Schwarzkopf, who led the first Gulf War. His dad trained Savak to yank out the fingernails of anybody in Iran who thought their oil belonged to them. He taught them how to attach battery cables to testicles to any Iranian who thought the oil underneath their ground belongs to them. And for some reason, in 1979, they overthrew the Shah and hate the United States. Now, look, this is the Persian Gulf, and there's a lot of oil there, lots and lots of oil. And to protect that oil, to make sure Iraq doesn't, for example, invade Kuwait or Saudi Arabia and then end up holding the world's oil supply hostage, the United States of America, over the past year, invested trillions and trillions of dollars. We sent American soldiers to fight and die over this very special sliver of the globe. And now, all of a sudden, we're using that very same military to keep the flow of oil from leaving the Persian Gulf. On April 13th, Donald Trump reversed 81 years of official military policy. It is no longer our War Department's mission to keep oil flowing out of the Persian Gulf. It is now our War Department's singular purpose to prevent oil from leaving the Persian Gulf. Now, one would think maybe this is Trump's plan to save our planet by cutting off the source of greenhouse gases, which is not just tipping us into an uninhabitable planet, but these are also the same greenhouse gases that are among the leading causes of cancer, neurological disease, birth defects, Alzheimer's, heart disease, lung disease, strokes, and voting Republican. One might think, using our military to cut off nearly 25% of the world's oil would force upon us a massive transition to alternative energy. But one would be wrong, because Republicans hate anybody who transitions. Just yesterday, the Trump administration, with your tax dollars paid two energy companies $1 billion total to cancel their wind farms and use that money instead to invest in oil and liquid natural gas. You just paid Blue Point Energy here in the state of New York and Golden State Energy in California a total of close to $1 billion to shut down their wind farms. Your Environmental Protection Agency, Lee Zeldin, at work. And Doug Burgum, Department of Interior. But wait, it gets even better. Last month, on March 23rd, the Trump administration handed the French energy company Total a check for $1 billion of your money to shut down two wind farm projects, one off the coast of North Carolina and another off the coast of New York State. This was going to create massive, good-paying jobs. Your tax dollars paid $1 billion to the French company Total Energies to shut down wind farms, while at the same time, your military is choking off the world's supply of oil, the stuff that's killing us. But unless we invest in wind, geothermal, solar, we'll die from lack of oil. So we're dying from the oil, and we're also going to die from not having enough oil because Donald Trump is paying energy companies not to build wind farms. According to Axios, and this was confirmed today by the Associated Press, the Iranians, through Pakistan acting as the intermediary, Iran told the Trump administration that if we, the United States, lifted that blockade, Iran would open up the Strait of Hormuz. Axios and the Associated Press reporting that Iran conveyed a message that both sides, the United States and Iran, could discuss other issues like Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We can discuss that at another time, Iran said, but let's end the blockade so we can open Hormuz. Trump isn't interested. Trump wants Hormuz closed. I'm going to get to why he wants it closed in a second. But he's a merchant of chaos, and a lot of things come quick and fast, so you can't keep track. So let's review the timeline here. On April 8th, the United States and Iran declared a 2-week ceasefire. April 8th. Today is the 28th, so that would be 20 days ago. Trump announced his blockade of Hormuz on April 13th, 5 days later, thinking what? What was he thinking? I can force Iran to promise to never shut down Hormuz if America shuts it down themselves? I mean, how does that work? Like, it's like a COVID vaccine. If you give yourself just a little, your body develops antigens. Is that how it works? We shut down Hormuz, and then all of a sudden we're immune to Iran shutting down Hormuz? I don't know what he's thinking. On April 13th is when the double blockade of Hormuz began. The 2-week ceasefire between Iran and the United States was scheduled to end on April 21st. And Trump thought, I guess, the blockade would, I really don't know, choke off Iran's source of money and oil. But Trump lifted sanctions on Iranian and Russian oil to make sure there was enough supply on the global market to keep prices down. So why would he close Hormuz if he wanted to keep the price of oil down? Why did you lift sanctions on Russian and Iranian oil only to end up blockading the Strait of Hormuz? I'll get to it in a second. There's a reason. On April 17th, just 4 days before our ceasefire with Iran was set to expire, Israel and Lebanon declared their own 10-day ceasefire. And this was actually a success story. If you squinted hard enough and were drinking and stupid and didn't pay attention, you would actually think this was a success for the Trump White House. And so, on that very day, April 17th, Iran said it would open the Strait of Hormuz because Lebanon and Israel signed a 10-day ceasefire. And then, immediately after Iran announced it was opening the Strait of Hormuz, Donald Trump declared the Strait of Hormuz is now open for business. Yay! This is April 17th, a Friday, with 4 days remaining on the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. Lebanon and Israel signed a 10-day ceasefire. So Iran said, in the spirit of peace, we're opening Hormuz. That was a Friday, April 17th. And Trump was having a good day. For the first time since he foolishly started this war, he saw a window, an opportunity to save face. And the stock market soared because oil prices plunged 10% on Friday, April 17th. And then Trump panicked. because he had no idea what comes next. So he declared on the very same day, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. I, Donald Trump, refuse to put an end to the blockade until I don't know what, until Iran gives up its nuclear ambitions. It discontinued its nuclear weapons program in 2003. The whole world knows that. How can Iran give up something it doesn't have? Within 24 hours, that was Friday, on April 17th, within 24 hours, Hormuz was completely blocked up again. By April 18th, Iran and the United States wouldn't allow any ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz. The United States wouldn't allow any ship to enter or leave the Persian Gulf, neither would Iran. So Trump had 3 days until the ceasefire with Iran expired. What to do? He began threatening more war crimes on top of the war crimes he's already committed in Iran, the Eastern Pacific, and the Caribbean. So you all remember what happened. Once again, Trump and Hegseth threatened to destroy power stations and water desalination plants, even though this time his lawyers and his generals said, you can't do that anymore. You know those war crimes we committed for you previously? Well, they're not working. Those war crimes we committed for you, all they have accomplished is opening us up to criminal prosecution if and when the United States ever enforces the war crime statutes on its books. Not talking about international law. I'm talking about war crime statutes passed in the 1990s. So the lawyers and the generals sat down with Hegseth, who then had to convey to Donald Trump that because we lost this war with Iran, those war crimes could be viewed as illegal. And we don't want to commit any more war crimes because now that we've lost, they're illegal. That's how you enforce war crimes. Only the losers are guilty of war crimes. And that is why Donald Trump on April 22nd had no choice but to declare he would extend the ceasefire with Iran indefinitely, to which Iran's lead negotiator, who refused to show up for a second round of peace talks, he said, after Trump magnanimously extended the ceasefire, the Speaker of Iran's parliament said, quote, "The losing side of a war doesn't dictate the terms of their own surrender," unquote. As Germany's Chancellor, a conservative, a natural ally of Trump's, said, Iran is humiliating him. The problem being Trump is too stupid to know when he's being humiliated. His entire life has been an exercise in unwitting humiliation. Because he's so stupid, he has no idea how to solve a problem of his own making. Now, Iran wants to end this war, but the regime is never going to be toppled. They're not giving up their power, and they're not giving up their nuclear enrichment program, and they're not giving up their ability to close down the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, thanks to Donald Trump's illegal war, the Iranian regime has now tightened its grip. It is better off today than it was on February 27th, the day before Trump launched this illegal war. Iran is better off now because America showed its hand, and Iran discovered they can close the Strait of Hormuz, and there's nothing America's multi-trillion-dollar military can do about it. Nothing. There's no military solution to this. You know, when they say if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. Well, in America, all we have are bombs, so everybody's dark-skinned and worthy of collateral damage. That's how it works here in the United States. The solution to everything is dropping a bomb. But this diplomacy, we don't do diplomacy. But the American people are wising up. They would never stand for the spilling of American blood in order to seize and hold Hormuz. The polling for Trump on the war, the polling on sending in ground troops is abysmal. But he can't sign a peace deal with Iran. Can't do it. He signs some kind of deal with Iran, it will be far worse than the one Obama signed with Iran back in 2015. The message Donald Trump keeps giving Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who should be in prison, he keeps saying, my deal has to be superior than the Obama deal. So whatever you come back with, if it's not better than the Obama deal, I'm not on board. I've been over this before. Trump can't get anything nearly as good as the deal that Obama got with Iran, because in 2015, Obama was holding all the cards. Iran knew that. Obama even had Putin on board. Not just the UN, but all of Europe. Obama had the entire world on board, and should Iran not sign the deal, or should they sign the deal and violate the terms of the agreement, the world would enforce the deal. Now, some are going to say Iran violated the terms of the deal. That's for another show. I'll go over that. We've been through that. I'm not an apologist for Iran, but you avoid what we're going through right now at all costs until it's unavoidable. And Trump didn't do that. No, instead, Trump, exhausted as much as 50% of our nation's missiles and interceptors by bombing Iran. 13,000 bombs dropped on Iran. That's before he sat down to negotiate. Iran knew who they were dealing with. Wasn't Obama. It was a cretin, a stupid cretin. Donald Trump, stupid, cretinous, megalomaniac. So when Iran was dealing with Barack Obama, Iran had never closed the Strait of Hormuz. They didn't know how the world would react. It took Donald Trump to show Iran that if they close Hormuz, the United States will be powerless when it comes to convincing Iran to open it back up by using bombs. Trump showed his hand. So Trump doesn't know what to do, because any deal with Iran will be far, far worse than what was already in place before Trump, in his infinite stupidity, killed it. Trump doesn't really know what he wants other than chaos. For him, chaos is opportunity. So he is, I believe, settling on two options. This is how I think he sleeps at night. Both options are evil because he's evil. Both options are predicated on Hormuz being COVID, where the entire global economy gets shut down, and so he and the world is left with one of his two options. Okay, here's what he's thinking. And remember, he's insane. These are the new Trump commemorative passports. This year, if you renew your passport, you get one with Trump's face on it. That was announced today. Trump's signature will soon be on all American currency. So we're dealing with a paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur. That's just Melania. I have no idea what's going on with Trump. I know there's mental illness, but I have no idea how to diagnose that. So this is what he's planning. These, I believe, I'm convinced, are his two options. The double blockade, in his enfeebled mind, will continue. He knows the clock is ticking, not on the ceasefire. Trump extended the ceasefire indefinitely. So he's willing to live with the Strait of Hormuz staying closed. The clock is ticking, though, on how much longer the world and the United States can withstand the Strait of Hormuz embargo. How much longer can we survive with 20% of the world's energy supply cut off, and even, some say more importantly, 30% of the world's fertilizer? The International Monetary Fund, the EU, the UN, even Trump's own energy department, all have some apocalyptic predictions for what we're looking at if Hormuz isn't opened by July 1st of this year. It terrifies everyone except Donald Trump. Remember COVID in 2020? This is going to be worse. We're looking on July 1st at the average gallon of gas here in the United States costing $7 if Hormuz isn't open by July 1st. Rest of the world, we pay, only Venezuela pays less for gas than we do. The International Monetary Fund says global inflation will shoot up close to 5% by the end of the year. We will have both massive inflation and massive unemployment as corporate America uses this crisis as an opportunity to raise prices while replacing millions of high-paying jobs with artificial intelligence. They're waiting for an excuse to start firing everybody. Facebook already is firing everybody. It's starting. Even though the economy is supposedly doing well, artificial intelligence, they say if we don't put some restraints on artificial intelligence, we could be looking at 25% unemployment, which is what we had during the Great Depression. So this is the opportunity with the Strait of Hormuz, inflation, a worldwide recession. That's what's going to happen if Hormuz stays shut. This is the opportunity for corporate America to replace all of us with a chip. Not hyperbole. We are looking at not just mass starvation worldwide, but here in the United States, where there is hunger. It's too depressing to talk about. Fertilizer costs in some states, farmers like in Ohio say fertilizer costs have spiked 40%. It's planting season, and farmers are trying to plant, but Americans won't be able to afford what they harvest. We are looking possibly at a planet by July 1st on the brink of coming completely undone. And that's what Trump is thinking about. Because it's what he wants. He wants what? A reason to invoke the Insurrection Act. Social unrest always follows these conditions. He knows that. So He's looking for social unrest to justify invoking emergency powers. That's what the ICE raids in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, and Chicago were all about. He was trying to outrage enough people in blue cities that protests would appear to be so unruly, he could convince enough fascists or low information voters, same thing, that he had no choice but to invoke emergency powers, which a lot of people want him to do. They think it's more efficient. So he failed in Los Angeles, he failed in Chicago, and he failed in Minneapolis. He couldn't light the match. But what if, just like his sugar daddy, Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump could wage an unpopular war? What if, just like Vladimir Putin, Trump could put his nation on a war footing, even though that nation doesn't want to go to war because it's hungry, broke, out of work, and desperate? What if Donald Trump could convince enough low information voters here in America that Iran can't have this kind of power over our economy, and we have to commit ground troops to save our way of life because Iran is forcing our country to go broke from double-digit inflation. You can't eat, not because of our budget cuts. You're starving because Iran refuses to open the Strait of Hormuz. What if just enough Americans reluctantly go along with sending in ground troops, thinking either this would solve Hormuz or they secretly want a war because all the power of the federal government gets consolidated inside the Oval Office? There are secret, not so secret anymore, fascists. They think it's more efficient. And we know once American soldiers are sent into harm's way, Americans immediately rally around the flag and, of course, the president. And it's deemed unpatriotic to even question our commander-in-chief or his motives or his plans. Pete Hegseth, I have a clip, I'll try to get to it later, is accusing the press of being unpatriotic for asking him difficult questions. The problem is the American people, having gone through Vietnam, the first, the second Gulf War, Afghanistan, and this, we've wised up. Most of us. The vast majority of Americans see right through Donald Trump. He is the most transparent president in American history. Remember Pam Bondi said, I'm going to release the Epstein files, and I'm going to prove to you that Donald Trump will be the most transparent president in American. Yes, we see right through him. We all see through him. It's why Trump's approval ratings are at record lows. And if this were an ordinary election cycle, the Republicans would definitely lose the House and maybe the Senate. But this is the age of Trump. So the American people, not all, but a lot, would take to the streets if he committed ground troops. If he committed ground troops to free up Hormuz or Karg Island, the way Lindsey Graham wants, there would be millions of Americans taken to the streets protesting the lunatic inside our Oval Office who is spending money we don't have on a war we can't afford, trying to open up a crucial maritime sea lane that was closed due to his own stupidity and negligence. Yes, we will see massive protests around the country if he commits ground troops. They will be peaceful protests. Millions taking to the streets. The No King, we saw it with the No Kings. They'll be peaceful protests, just like we saw in 2020 at the height of COVID. Americans took to the streets to protest the murder of George Floyd. Those protests were peaceful. So the police and outside agitators showed up. Like people like Kyle Rittenhouse showed up with his AR-15 to kill 2 Black Lives Matter protesters and injured 1. No analog to Kyle Rittenhouse in the Black Lives Matter protest arena. Nobody from Black Lives Matter showed up with an AR-15 and began killing people like Rittenhouse, who claimed he was showing up to protect small businesses from looting. But we know what the looting is. Study after study shows it wasn't the Black Lives Matter protesters doing the looting. And despite what everybody thinks, there wasn't that much looting. You know, when you see flames, the news media tends to do close-up shots of the flames. So you think, oh, all of Kenosha is on fire. Who was doing the looting? Not the Black Lives Matter protesters. It was, as is always the case, agent provocateurs. That is the definition of an agent provocateur. Opportunistic street gangs who figure, hey, I can break into the store. Undercover cops who figured, I don't get paid enough, so I'll do some looting. And of course, business owners wanting to collect the insurance. We know this. The Black Lives Matter protesters were all peaceful. The actual Black Lives Matter protests didn't turn violent until the cops showed up and began smashing skulls, which is why police departments, especially here in New York City, police departments around the country over the past 5-6 years have had to pay out tens and tens of millions of dollars in civil damages to all the innocent Black Lives Matter protesters whose skulls they cracked, which is what the Black Lives Matter protests were about in the first place. But it doesn't matter what the truth is about the Black Lives Matter protests, because the story of fascism, and this is what we're up against, fascism. The story of fascism is littered with extrajudicial thugs showing up to peaceful protests against an authoritarian leader, and those thugs in the service of the authoritarian leader, they begin cracking skulls. And the police don't see it, conveniently. By the time the riot that the regime or the authoritarian leader's thugs sparked, by the time that riot is over, there are enough people to believe it was the peaceful protesters who started the riot. We saw this in 2020, right? Fox News was all about Black Lives Matter protesters looting and destroying cities. Doesn't matter what the truth was. These are black people. These are white people marching with black people. They're dangerous. They're violent because they're black or they sympathize with black people. Doesn't matter that they're peaceful. If you repeat the lie long enough and loud enough, the people who want to believe that lie will believe it. Fox News has made billions off that premise, first introduced to us by Dr. Joseph Goebbels. If you were to ask most Republicans, What was the worst thing about 2020? What do you remember about 2020? They're not going to say COVID. Republicans aren't going to bring up COVID and the 1 million Americans who ended up dying from COVID because Donald Trump had no idea what to do other than exploit the chaos flowing from his incompetence. That's what he loves. He loves chaos because there's opportunity for him in chaos. But if you ask most Republicans, what was the worst thing about 2020? Stephen Miller's grandmother died from COVID in 2020. If you were to ask Stephen Miller, what made 2020 one of the worst years of your life, he would say the Black Lives Matter protests, because he hates black people more than he loves his grandmother. I doubt he loved his grandmother. I think she might have been an immigrant. A lot of sickness there. And by the way, the parents, from what I've read, just as bad. The cousins, the uncles are fine. The parents, that's the family, apparently, allegedly, he came from. So Trump sees the closing of Hormuz the same way he saw COVID. Chaos, fear. There's opportunity for me here. There's an opportunity for me to concentrate power. Doesn't matter that it's my fault. I can handle that. There are enough stupid people that I can convince it's Nancy Pelosi's fault. And if there's enough chaos and enough people are angry at me, I could invoke the Insurrection Act to either what? Cancel the 2026 midterms, which I'm going to lose, or sow enough chaos that the new Congress can't be seated on January 3rd, 2027. Well, we know he's done that before. January 6, 2021, we know that. There's a reason Donald Trump pardoned the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. You're looking at Yale Law School graduate Stewart Rhodes, who is the founder of the Oath Keepers, sentenced to nearly 20 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. Seditious conspiracy. Thanks to what? The role he played on January 6. We don't know who he was in league with inside the White House during the lead up to January 6. We have ideas, we have suspicions. We do know his legal fees were paid by the help of Trump's own lawyer, Sidney Powell, standing there with Boris Epstein and Jenna Ellis there and Rudy Giuliani, announcing that the 2020 election was stolen and we're going to investigate that. Sidney Powell helped either pay Stewart Rhodes legal fees. She had a foundation that raised money for Stewart Rhodes. Why was one of Trump's lawyers paying legal fees for Stewart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, who was doing close to 20 years for seditious conspiracy because of the role he played on January 6? Inquiring minds want to know, but the American people reelected Donald Trump and he shut down Jack Smith's investigation. Don't blame the Supreme Court. It wasn't the Supreme Court ruling. It was the American people. He came back with superseding indictments. Jack Smith came back with superseding indictments proving that Donald Trump's involvement in January 6 was not an official act as commander-in-chief, and had Kamala Harris won, I have no doubt Donald Trump would have been convicted. But the American people voted for Donald Trump. They're the ones who shut down this investigation. They know who controls the Justice Department: Donald Trump. We also know that Stuart Rhodes, founder of the Oath Keepers, Yale Law School, I believe, did J.D. Vance graduate from Yale Law School? I think. We also know, did Clarence Thomas graduate from Yale Law School? I think. We know that Stuart Rhodes testified in his defense that he showed up with a cache of weapons on January 6th, absolutely convinced that the Oath Keepers were about to be deputized by Donald Trump after he invoked the Insurrection Act. That's what Stuart Rhodes believed, that Donald Trump was sending his goons down to the Capitol. Go fight like hell. Your country depends on it. Go down there. And there'd be rioting and chaos, which Trump views as opportunity, and then he could invoke the Insurrection Act, but he wasn't surrounded with the loyalists who surround him today. You had General Milley as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You had people still in government who would say, this is an illegal order, sir. Not anymore. Although, because we're losing in Iran, the generals and the lawyers are saying, we don't want to commit any more war crimes. But only because we're losing, sir, with all due respect. If we were winning, these wouldn't be war crimes. So, does Trump have a plan? Yes, chaos. It's stochastic terrorism. You throw things into the air, see who responds to it. Just keep things bubbling up. Because chaos for Trump is opportunity. As long as the American people or the world can't keep straight who is who, what is what, Trump tries to take what he wants. Chaos is the plan. That's Iran. What does Netanyahu want? Chaos in Iran. He wants to turn Iran into Syria. So the Iranians are fighting among themselves instead of funneling weapons and money to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So chaos is opportunity. Benjamin Netanyahu looks at the globe, divide and conquer. Lebanon, break it apart so they're not attacking us. Syria, Iran. The plan for Iran, I don't know if Trump knew this, but Netanyahu talked Trump into breaking Iran into little pieces, Trump not really knowing that the plan was to break Iran into little pieces, although maybe he did, because he's a merchant of chaos. So, Trump doesn't know what he's doing, but he knows what he's doing. He believes his only way out of the mess he made with Iran is for Hormuz to remain closed. Plus, he cannot leave the Oval Office. Cannot. Because he will spend the rest of his life in court. In court. Civil suits. And we will get to test the Supreme Court ruling. A lot of the crimes Donald Trump is committing right now do not fall under the umbrella, the color of the official role of a president. He knows that. He knows that. He's going to spend the rest of his life in civil and criminal court once he leaves office in 2029. That's why he's not leaving. He can't. The ballroom, the destruction of the White House, it's all about, if I'm going to be here for a while, I want this place to be nice. So his plan is the same plan he had on January 6th. He needs to put our country and the world on the brink. And then, once we're on the brink, he can employ or deploy one of his two options. He's got two options. The two options are commit ground troops and create a climate where he could convince enough Americans that he has to invoke the Insurrection Act. And the second option is, and I don't think he's going to choose this, is to say, it's your problem, Europe, we're leaving. Now, that would be the smart thing to do, where he just says, you know what, we don't need the oil. We got plenty. I'll get to that in a second. We need the oil. But the smart thing to do right now for him to save face and save the planet is for Trump to declare, we're the largest producer of liquid natural gas, we're the largest producer of oil, we're leaving, it's Europe's problem. We broke it, but it's Europe's problem. That would be the smart thing to do, and Europe would solve it. He's not going to do that. So his other option is commit ground troops, which will create so much unrest, social unrest here in the United States. He'll declare martial law. He'll invoke, I think he has 300 emergency powers at his disposal. He'll claim we're a nation at war, and anybody who protests, raises an eyebrow, you're unpatriotic. Treason. He already said those 5 or 6 members of Congress who served in our intelligence community or were in the military who recorded a PSA reminding soldiers you're not allowed to follow illegal orders. Remember that? Donald Trump sent out a Truth Social message saying, treason, punishable by death. Unpatriotic. Everything is treasonous, except January 6th. You're all pardoned there. Real treason, real sedition, I'm going to pardon you or commute your sentences. We saw this after Saturday's White House Correspondents Dinner shooting. We saw it. Everyone in the White House, Trump, spokesliar Caroline Leavitt, acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, they all blamed the shooting on Democrats for calling Trump a wannabe tyrant. That's it. Not guns. Not guns. Democrats, members of the press, calling Trump what he is, a wannabe tyrant, a fascist. That incites violence. So the problem, according to Todd Blanche, wasn't lax security or easy access to guns. It's the left. It's the Democrats and their cult of hatred for Donald Trump. It's why Todd Blanche just indicted former FBI Chief James Comey over not just free speech, but free seashells. You got to watch your seashells. It's not just watching what you say. You got to watch how you arrange your seashells. The left is a cult of hatred for Donald Trump. It's the Democrats constantly calling Trump what he is, and that is a fascist. Todd Blanche, our acting Attorney General, who really wants to be Attorney General. People say Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, is probably going to get the job. But Todd Blanche is doing everything he can to debase himself in front of Donald Trump so he can be the Attorney General. Todd Blanche insists security wasn't lax Saturday night. It's Democrats, members of the press. Security was incredibly lax. Look at this. This is an actual photo of the alleged shooter who snuck into the lobby that night, disguised as a baked potato. He was able to go through 2 rings of security because they thought he was part of the dinner. Cole Thomas Allen, arraigned on Monday by force of habit. Janine Pirro charged him with mortgage fraud. That's all she knows how to do. So security was not good Saturday night. They were able to block Cole Thomas Allen from entering the banquet room, but an Iranian tanker carrying 200,000 barrels of crude oil did find its way to the Vanity Fair table. So, very bad. He also had a manifesto. The alleged shooter had a manifesto, and that's how you know he wasn't a Trump supporter. He could write. This is Stephen Miller running for safety during Saturday's White House Correspondents Dinner. You can see he's using his pregnant wife, Katie, as a human shield. Well, a shield. I don't know about human. And here is Katie Miller, who is a miskite. Here is the ugly Katie Miller on Fox News blaming the shooting on the angry political rhetoric on the left. Not guns, not lax security. It's the angry political rhetoric. Well, take a listen.
You know, it is crazy, as we just saw your intro, about the political violence and political rhetoric in this country. It's no mistake that this man hails from the state of California, and that of Gavin Newsom, who is one of the worst offenders of this violent political rhetoric that we see that sparks this man's imagination.
Yes, got to watch what we say. Watch what you say. Well, let me play you an example of Gavin Newsom and the kind of things he said just 2 days before the shooting. Katie Miller's right. Here's an example of Gavin Newsom.
Every single day, you read another horror story about a rapist, a murderer, a thug, a monster, a child predator let into this country by the Democrats, attacking our families, attacking our children, preying on the innocent in our high schools, in our colleges, dragging people to their deaths, beating them senseless, hacking them to death with machetes. That's what you're seeing from Democrat policies. President Trump, by contrast, record deportations, record low crime, record border security, record safety for American citizens.
I'm sorry, that wasn't Gavin Newsom. That was Katie Miller's odious husband, the turtle-faced Stephen Miller. Here is, yes, that's Stephen Miller. Here is acting Attorney General Todd Blanche trying to become Attorney General, not acting Attorney General. Here he is trying to blame the media for the incident at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Now, he fails. Listen to what he says. There's a little Freudian slip here, but here is acting Attorney General Todd Blanche desperately trying to debase himself for Trump's viewing.
Who, and many people in this room, if we're going to be honest about it, has done it as well. They're just as guilty as a lot of people on X. When you have reporters, when you have media just being overly critical and calling the president horrible names for no reason and without evidence, without proof, it shouldn't surprise us that this type of rhetoric takes place.
It shouldn't surprise us that this type of rhetoric takes place. It was a Freudian slip. He meant to say this kind of violence takes place. Pay attention.
It shouldn't surprise us that this type of rhetoric takes place.
No, you meant to say this type of violence takes place. But deep in your heart, yes, you knew it shouldn't surprise us that this type of rhetoric takes place. When you have a president who behaves like a fascist, it shouldn't surprise us that this type of rhetoric takes place. Todd Blanche is the acting Attorney General. He was Deputy Attorney General until Pam Bondi got fired. Before that, he was Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney. And thanks to Todd Blanche's brilliant lawyering, Donald Trump is the first president ever to be a convicted felon. We've never had a convicted felon as president of the United States. We've had felons, but they weren't convicted. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. And it's funny about Todd Blanche. Throughout all of Trump's trials in 2023 and 2024, I didn't hear a peep from Todd Blanche about all the death threats getting phoned into judges, jurors, prosecutors, witnesses, reporters who dared to suggest that Donald Trump should be brought to justice. The millions of dollars that had to be spent in 2023 and 2024 to protect our courthouses, our prosecutors, officers of the courts, all because they put Trump on trial, and not a peep from Todd Blanche about that violent rhetoric. The U.S. Marshal Service reports that there have been 275 death threats against judges in 2026. That's just the first 3 months. Last year, grand total, 564. So the Marshal Service is now asking Congress for an additional $34 million because the threats in the foreseeable future are likely to increase. Donald Trump said on 60 Minutes, I don't think I've created a very violent climate in the political arena. And then he says, it's very dangerous in the political arena. I need a ballroom. I can't go out in public. You need to spend $500 million in a ballroom because the political arena has just gotten too dangerous. But I don't see it being dangerous. Pizza doxings. That started right after January 6th. These are deliveries designed to scare the hell out of judges in memory of District Judge Esther Salas. A pizza driver delivered a pizza in 2020 to her home, and that pizza delivery driver ended up killing the judge's son, Daniel. So to chill judges, to scare judges, the Trump supporters are doing what is called pizza doxings. Doxings. They find the home address of a judge who rules against Donald Trump, and they send a pizza to say, remember what happened to District Judge Esther Salas's son? Trump is in cahoots with these people. It's stochastic terrorism. He doesn't have to pick up a phone and say, do this. He has to say, Proud Boys, stand back, stand by. The only thing he had to say after January 6th, the last thing Donald Trump said to his staff on January 6th before retiring to the private residence was, boy, Mike Pence really let me down today. That's how he summed up January 6th. When Marjorie Taylor Greene was instrumental in passage of the Epstein Transparency Act last winter, when she began pushing for Trump and the DOJ to release the Epstein files, she began getting death threats. It's why she's no longer serving in Congress. And she called Donald Trump and said, your supporters are threatening to kill me and my son. And Donald Trump said, well, if your son gets killed, the only person you'll have to blame is yourself, unquote. He has never once, not once, denounced or renounced the death threats, the bomb threats, the doxings against his political and legal enemies. He'll say, well, I don't know, a lot of people are really upset about what happened. You know, when you treat me this unfairly, this is what's going to happen. That's what he says. He never says, I oppose this behavior. He could stop it, or some of it, by saying, don't do this. He wants it. He wants it. So, as most of you know, where am I? As most of you know, the White House is using this shooting as an opportunity to once again try to get Jimmy Kimmel fired by once again taking Jimmy's words out of context. The FCC, once again now, is looking into ABC's broadcast licenses. On his show last week, in the lead up to the White House Correspondents Dinner, knowing that Trump was supposed to speak, Kimmel did a sketch on his show where he delivered his own speech at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Like he was going to do, if they asked me to be the entertainer instead of Oz, the mentalist, this is the speech I would have given. And he said, and I quote, he's like kind of roasting the room, our first lady, Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow, unquote. Seashells. It's like James Comey's Seashells. Fire the man. You have a glow like an expectant widow, unquote. And the White House and Melania are saying Jimmy Kimmel was calling for, I won't even say the words. The joke was not about Trump getting hurt and Melania being a widow. The joke was Melania hates her husband and he's old enough to be her father and she can't wait. That was the joke. It was about Trump being almost 80 come June. He eats crap, he's morbidly obese, and he gets no exercise. Golf isn't exercise if you're using a golf cart. The joke is about Donald Trump being an old fat pig who cheats on his wife, doesn't take care of himself, married to someone young enough to be his daughter. That was the joke. And now Melania wants Jimmy Kimmel fired. Here is White House spokesliar Caroline Leavitt, who came back from maternity leave. So right after the White House Correspondents Dinner was canceled, she jumped back into the fray just so she could wade into this crap.
Much of the manifesto of the would-be assassin is indistinguishable from the words that we hear daily from so many. For example, as the First Lady of the United States pointed out this morning, just 2 days prior to the shooting, ABC's late-night host Jimmy Kimmel disgustingly called First Lady Melania Trump an expectant widow. Who in their right minds says a wife would be glowing over the potential murder of her beloved husband? And having experienced what I did with the First Lady on Saturday night, I can tell you that she was anything but that. This kind of rhetoric about the president, the First Lady, and his supporters is completely deranged, and it's unbelievable that the American people are consuming it night after night.
Well, you got rid of Colbert. He's going after next month, and now you're trying to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. And Melania loves Donald. Loves him. How could she not? How could she not love Donald Trump, the man who had unprotected sex with a porn star just weeks after Melania gave him a son? How could she not love her husband? Here is more from White House spokesliar Caroline Leavitt explaining why she temporarily ended her maternity leave in order to jump back in to the morass and berate members of the press.
But given the attempted assassination of the president and, quote, top Trump administration officials, as the depraved shooter noted in his manifesto at the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Saturday evening, I felt it was prudent to be here today to answer your questions and inform the American people about how the administration is responding to yet another attempt on President Trump's life. Saturday was supposed to be a joyful evening, celebrating free speech and the First Amendment with all of you, members of the press. Instead, F
the First Amendment. Watch what you say, and I'm going to twist your words around to make it look like you're all traitors. You don't give a crap about the First Amendment. Seashells. They're indicting Jim Comey over seashells. He took a picture of seashells and they indicted him. What's her name? Caroline Leavitt, pregnant. Stephen Miller's wife, pregnant. J.D. Vance's wife, pregnant. They're all getting pregnant in the White House because Donald Trump loves children. But enough about the Epstein files. Meanwhile, in the Senate, Republicans competed to see who could debase themselves the most for Donald Trump. This is Republican Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt.
Real quick, let me tie one electrical cord to the question to what we're talking about today.
Oh, wait. Did he just say he was going to tie an electrical cord to the question that we're talking about today? Is that what he said? Because, wow, that is the problem with Congress. Nobody except Eric Schmitt from Missouri has the courage to tie an electrical cord to the important questions of the day and garrote them like Danny Aiello whacking Frankie Five Angels in Godfather 2. Wow, this is good stuff. Here is Missouri Republican Senator Eric Schmitt tying an electrical cord to the question.
Let me tie one electrical cord to the question to what we're talking about today. Why are we here?
Yes. It's going to get deep. Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri he is going to tie an electrical cord to the question that has plagued philosophers for thousands of years. Why are we here? Go ahead and tie that electrical cord. Huh? What happened? Did I lose it? Oh, here we go. Tie that electrical cord.
Let me tie one electrical cord to the question to what we're talking about today. Why are we here?
Are you going to answer us? Oh, I don't have it. He didn't. Turns out he was talking about we need a White House ballroom. That I lost the clip. He was tying an electrical cord to the question of why we need to spend $500 million to build Donald Trump's White House, because he said Democrats won't stop accusing ICE of behaving like the Gestapo. He said because the Democrats keep accusing ICE of serving as Donald Trump's personal police, Donald Trump is no longer safe. He's saying it's no longer safe for the President of the United States to leave the White House, so we must spend $500 million to build a ballroom. So he can attend events like the White House Correspondents Dinner by holding them in the White House. That's tying the electrical cord to this question. Yeah. You don't make it harder for people to buy guns. No, we have to spend $500 million on a ballroom for the White House so Donald Trump never has to leave, so he can just stay inside the White House with the curtains drawn, peeing into mason jars and growing his fingernails 16 inches long like Howard Hughes. There were two emergent talking points seconds after those shots were fired. Democrats are responsible, and we need to build the ballroom. The first thing Trump said at the press conference in the immediate aftermath of the shooting is, this is proof why I need my ballroom. Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, the night of the shooting said, this is proof. It's not safe for the president. We need a ballroom. They all said there are too many crazy people with guns. It's not safe for the president. He needs his own ballroom. How about the rest of us? Can I have my own ballroom so I don't get shot? No, I don't run the risk of getting shot. Where's my ballroom? Well, you know who loves our president's ballroom? Lindsey Graham. He loves balls, and he likes a big ballroom for those balls. He cannot get enough of Donald Trump's presidential balls. He went to all 7 of Donald Trump's presidential inaugural balls because Lindsey Graham just loves the president's balls, and he wants plenty of room for the president's balls because Lindsey loves balls, and he needs plenty of room for those balls. I believe that is a picture of Lindsey Graham about to eat the head of a Barbie doll. For some reason, that's how Lindsey Graham relaxes. His idea of relaxation is getting rushed to the emergency room and being lightly sedated, not knocked out, lightly sedated, while that Pakistani internist with the haunted eyes yanks several heads of Barbie dolls out of the South Carolina senator's rectum. Yes. That may be AI. Let me look at that. I don't know. Leave a comment. I can't remember if that's Lindsey Graham. Yes, it's AI or it's Photoshop. I can't keep track anymore. Lindsey Graham really doesn't eat the heads of Barbies so he can get rushed to the emergency room, lightly sedated, while that Pakistani internist with the haunted eyes yanks the heads of several Barbie dolls out of his rectum. I mean, maybe it's true. I mean, why would I imagine that if it isn't true? Where would I get an idea like that if it isn't true? I don't know if it's true. I hope it's not true, but why would I think that if it weren't true? Here is Senator Lindsey Graham, who loves the president's balls. I'm sorry, that's the wrong clip. That's Lindsey Graham with White House Communications Director Stephen Chung. Remember him in 2024? We don't see Stephen Chung. He's at the White House. He won't show his faces for obvious reason. Here is Lindsey Graham, who loves balls, and he wants plenty of room for Donald Trump's balls. So he wants to spend $500 million on Donald Trump's balls. Here is Lindsey Graham telling us why we need to spend $500 million so there's room for Donald Trump's balls.
We're going to introduce legislation that would authorize $400 million to be spent to secure to build the presidential ballroom. Underneath, there will be a lot of military stuff. There will be a Secret Service annex, and we've paid for it by offsetting it with custom fees. But sure, the estimate is $332 million. We're going to do $400 million because I think it's probably going to take more. Private donations can be used, but I think they should be used for buying China and stuff like that.
He's going to pick it out.
Underneath this ballroom will be infrastructure that is national security centric. The ballroom itself will avoid the dilemma of having to leave the White House grounds with future presidents and this president's to go downtown in a place that's less secure.
Yes, you got it. And he kept talking about future presidents. If you watch this press conference, Lindsey kept assuring us this is for future presidents, wink, wink, like he's ever leaving the White House. And Lindsey knows he's not leaving the White House. But yes, it's not safe for the president to go anywhere because of not because of guns, because of the crazy rhetoric. So we need to build a big ballroom so the president never has to leave the White House. Well, go ahead, Lindsey Graham. Tell us what it would have been like Saturday night if the White House Correspondents' Dinner was held inside the president's ballroom.
He literally could have left his bedroom, walked out the back of the White House, and been at the ballroom. That's what needs to happen when you have 1,000 or 2,000 people gathered in today's environment. And the sooner we get the ballroom built, the more hardened it is, the better for the country. So I hope and pray that most people in the Senate after Saturday night will support this bill.
Yeah. No gun control laws, just $500 million to protect the president's balls because of the times we live in. We have to build a ballroom, because he said, because of the times we live in. We have to watch what we say because it's way too easy to buy a gun. So the Second Amendment trumps the First Amendment. Got to build a ballroom so the president never has to leave the White House. Yes. And you know he's never going to leave the White House. He's not going to hold any more rallies. There won't be any more conventions. He's just going to stay in the White House and never leave it. 2029, he ain't leaving. He ain't leaving. And Lindsey Graham will be the first one to say, I have to say, he's right. The president's right for not leaving. You've been very cruel to this man, and he has every right to stay. That's what he's going to say. He'll be King Donald. King Donald. Well, the King of England and his lovely wife, Camilla, came to the United States. Here they are, arriving, wearing flap jackets, bulletproof vests, and about an hour later, they were rounded up and held indefinitely inside an ICE detention facility. They couldn't produce their papers. What do we have here? So the president really didn't meet with them until he finished eating his Big Mac. Wouldn't even turn around. He's so pissed off about Hormuz that he just snubbed. Look at that. Tea was served. He wouldn't even look at King Charles. And then his manservant, who, I don't know, looks like Prince Andrew, arrived to feed him French fries. That's Prince. There's Prince Andrew. That is Prince Andrew. Donald Trump would not look at Camilla or King Charles as Prince Andrew serves him. I believe that would be the 10th round of Happy Meals. I guess Prince Andrew is working at the White House now. Well, they're finally, Donald Trump wouldn't make eye contact, but he did eat in front of the king. They had to do a costume change because and then to prove that we're only separated by the oceans, the king and the queen enjoyed a Happy Meal from McDonald's. There's Prince Andrew making sure. Would you like your 40th Big Mac, sir? Wait, is that Russell Brand? Oh, I know what it is, because it's Great Britain. You invite all of Donald Trump's favorite Brits to see the king and the queen. That's Russell Brand. And here's the president talking, and they're listening very politely. And now the president's angry. I don't know why. He's not looking at anybody. And Prince Andrew has 30 more quarter pounders he wants to give the president, but he doesn't want to interrupt Donald Trump when he's going to the bathroom. That's Donald Trump going to the bathroom, and more Big Macs. And then the entertainment began. Russell Brand, great comedian. Part of his show involved getting to second base with Queen Camilla. And it was just a private show. That's Russell Brand. And Queen Camilla loved it. Just loved it. Donald Trump loved it. Prince Andrew, I don't know what's going on with Prince Andrew. Some more Brits showed up. So let's see. That's Russell Brand giving the Queen a back rub. That's Prince Andrew unable to stand up because he's got a stiffy. That would be Kevin Spacey isn't British, but that would be Kevin Spacey getting a little too familiar with Prince Charles or King Charles. Why? Oh, I know, Hyde Park, the incident in Hyde Park. He's not British, but he was put on trial in Great Britain, so Donald Trump figured, why not invite him? There's Ghislaine Maxwell. That's great. She's just giving the president a back rub while everybody's getting back rubs. There's Russell Brand and Prince Andrew offering the Queen a back rub. And I don't know who that guy is sitting to the right of King Charles, but he's touching the king's right thigh and whispering, "Show me how you do your comb over. I'm bald, and I want to master the comb over." What do we have here? There's a younger looking... There's a younger looking Kevin Spacey. I don't know what happened, and he's getting a little too friendly with King Charles. And boy, Queen Camilla just loves laughing it up with Russell Brand and former Prince Andrew. Who do we have here? That would be Russell Brand, the Queen, Prince Andrew, saying, "You think you're so tough. You think you're so highfalutin." That's Ghislaine Maxwell giving the president a back rub. That's King Charles and another bald White House official looking for advice on a comb-over. There's another bald man who wants advice on a comb-over. There's Ghislaine Maxwell. There's the Queen laughing it up with Russell Brand. Yeah, just more of the same. There's an older Kevin Spacey. That's one of the great things about Kevin Spacey. He can age. If the part calls for it, he can age right in front of you. More there. See, that's Kevin Spacey, Ghislaine Maxwell. What do we have here? More Kevin Spacey. That's a young Kevin Spacey. Amazing. What do we have here? There's a little party that Donald Trump threw for Queen Camilla. You got your, on the far left, there's Woody Allen talking to Bill Cosby, Andrew Cuomo, chatting it up with Matt Gaetz, Ghislaine Maxwell, wanting to see if anybody needs a back rub. There's Kevin Spacey talking to King Charles. There's Matt Lauer, Bill O'Reilly, and Charlie Rose. Yeah, they're all there. Woody Allen, Bill Cosby. What a party. What a party. An older Kevin Spacey hitting or touching King Charles. There's Bill O'Reilly, Matt Lauer, Matt Gaetz, two Matts. There's Andrew Cuomo. That's a party. That's a show. All right. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. I don't know if those photos were real. They were given to me, and I'm beginning to suspect they're not real, that they may be Photoshop and artificial intelligence. In fact, I know they're not real. But they could be real. They could be real, so they might as well be real. Thank you for listening. Sorry about that. I go live with or without a show, obviously, without, Sunday nights, Tuesday nights, and Thursday nights at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Leave a comment in the comment section. I read all your comments. If I made any mistakes, leave a comment. Correct me. I issue corrections on this show. Subscribe to my channel, my newsletter. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. And I think that covers everything. That was AI. Full disclosure, that was AI and some Photoshop. I will see everybody live on Thursday of this week at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.